Hello, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reading and ranking the 2023 nominees for the Goodreads Choice Awards in the category of romance. This is my 5th year at making this video, and this is my favorite video that I make every single year. I'm going to vlog my reactions to the books that I haven't read before the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I am going to sit here and tell you about all of the books that I have read prior to the Goodreads Choice Awards. At the end of the video, I will tell you my predictions for what I believe the top 10 of those top 20 are going to be, and also what I believe the winner of the Goodreads Choice Awards will be. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let us read and react to the nominees for the 2023 Goodreads Choice Awards. Honestly, there's just nothing like starting another Goodreads Choice Awards reading vlog section. It feels good. I wish I had better news and better books to bring you, but 'tis life and 'tis this video series, right? This just happens every year. So I'm 50% into King of Pride by Anna Huang, and this is definitely not as bad as the book that I vlogged first last year, but that's not saying much. This book is about Isabella and Kai, and we learn about them in the first book in the series. They are like side characters, and now they're having their own romance. Yay! Kai is a buttoned-up English businessman. I guess is gonna become CEO of his mom's company. She's like stepping down early. He was supposed to get it when he was like 40. He's only 32. What's going on? And then we also have Isabella, who is like, she's just vibing, you know what I mean? Like, she's writing her own erotic thriller, which I don't know what the fuck that means, but she was an aspiring author, and her family's like, girl, you really need to get a better job besides bartending and like writing on the side. But she doesn't listen because, you know, all your dreams or whatever. It's not bad. The writing is definitely good. You can tell that editor is involved, which I like, which is no shade to Anna Huang's first book that she wrote and that I read. It was not a bad book, but this is just clearly more polished. That being said, I kind of miss the sort of like unhinged fanfiction-y vibes of Twisted Love. I feel like this book is just kind of lacking in the flavor department. It's not bad, it's just kind of boring, and I don't know which is worse. Gotten to the point where the two characters are hooking up, where Kai is like, I'm not actually buttoned up, I'm really your type. You know, he can't stand the fact that she's like dancing with another guy at a club, and so he's like, come home with me, I'll show you how feminist I can be. And he does, I guess, I don't know. It wasn't as like 0 to 60 again as like some of the books in that first series she wrote. I just remember like reading some of those books and being like, wow, okay, like, cute fanficky moments, and then like taste my member baby girl, like more aggressive. I don't know. I don't really know. I'm not doing a good job at describing what I didn't like about those ones, but this, it feels like a natural progression of the relationship, blah, blah, blah. But like, I'm not really seeing it. I feel like beyond a shared love of piano, I'm not really understanding their connection. And I kind of feel that way about a lot of billionaire romances. Full disclosure, billionaire romances are not my favorite. I think my problem maybe with them is that oftentimes you have these incredibly young and incredibly high-powered dudes who fall for women who, I don't want to say are stupid, but that just don't seem to have anything in common with them, right? Like, we like to think that opposites attract, fish out of water romances kind of work. I feel like if you are someone who is highly educated, someone who is around the same kind of people every day, and like your friends are all kind of same vibe, like why would you look for a sexual or like romantic partner that's completely different than that? I mean, I guess the novelty of it, but like, just don't see how these really work out long term unless you guys have very shared interests and like complement each other. I don't think that happens very often in billionaire romances. Like, I'm thinking of the classic 50 Shades, right? I'm sorry, but like Anna and Christian, like what the fuck did they have in common besides like a like of kinky sex? She didn't even like kinky sex that much. I'm just kind of like about this. It's not bad. It's palatable. Like, I'm very bored. At this 50% mark, I'm like, I have to read another 200 pages of this. Okay, cool. So, you know, in a time, I'm not gonna ramble anymore. I'll get back to you when I'm done with this. All right, King of Pride, finished it. I thought this was a book that I read, a book that I was incredibly bored and disappointed by. I really love Anna Huang. I really like her writing, and I was really excited because I think this book is better edited than a lot of her books, okay? But unfortunately, it was just lacking the heart that I have come to expect from her books. I feel like I believe in her romances, even if the surrounding things tend to be a little crazy. And in this book, there actually wasn't any craziness, but there also wasn't any romance to really root for. I didn't understand ultimately why this billionaire wanted to be with this heroine who works at this club and doesn't seem to have much in common with him. Maybe I'm not very romantic and not loving a opposites attract sort of romance, but I don't know, I wasn't convinced. I thought the third act conflict was boring as fuck. I don't know. This wasn't for me, okay? It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't for me. And there's nowhere really to rank this book yet because it's the first book I'm reading for this video, sort of. So there she blows. Love Convolutedly by Ellie Hazelwood is a story about Elsie, a theoretical physicist, adjunct professor just trying to make ends meet, and serial fake dating extraordinaire. Elsie is fake dating a guy named Greg for money. Initially, she like starts fake dating people on this fake dating app who need like one-off dates to events, and she kind of goes off script, goes off of the app whenever she meets Greg because he seems like a really nice, genuine guy who she wants to help out. He wants to look nice and important in front of his family, but unfortunately, his brother Jack is kind of onto him and kind of thinks there's more to Elsie than meets the eye, and that she might be lying about who she is. And unfortunately, his fears and suspicions are confirmed whenever he meets Elsie when she is interviewing for a position at the school that he teaches at. He is a professor of experimental physics, I believe, and she is, of course, a theoretical physicist. And this causes a bunch of mayhem because apparently theoretical physicists and experimental physicists don't get along. And specifically, Jack wrote a scathing article way back in the day about how theoretical physicists are basically bunk and you shouldn't believe them and nothing they say is true. But the more that Jack and Elsie get to know each other, the more that he starts kind of loosening up and she starts breaking down his walls. And none of the plot, none of the confusing ass plot that I just told you fucking matters at all. And I guess it does in that it is the plot of the book. I think the confusing ass synopsis of this book really does a disservice to what I consider to be Allie Hazelwood's most grounded romance to date. This book is deeply romantic, and despite some miscommunication that happens at the beginning, obviously, the communication that develops between Jack and Elsie I think is really sweet, deeply romantic, super swoon-worthy, and I actually found myself crying at one point in this book, which I didn't ever expect to do for an author who typically specializes in Raylo fanfiction, but she got me hook, line, and sinker, 4 stars, placing this one ahead of King of Pride, obviously. Number 3, Hello Dumbass by Catherine Center. This is a book about a girl named Sadie who feeds her dog Chinese food instead of kibble, and because of a head injury is now face blind, which puts Sadie in a proverbial pickle because she's a portrait artist trying to prove to her family that she has what it takes by entering this prestigious art competition. But it wouldn't be a romance without some euphemistic pickle. And Sadie, our face blind, manic pixie dream girl, is torn between a rock and a dick place. The hot vet who helps her take care of her poorly taken care of dog, the guy that lives in her apartment building who's like kind of a misogynist, but like not really. And if you put your thinking cap on, you might be thinking to yourself, there might be more to this love triangle that meets the eye. Part of that, though, is how much of this book was a disappointment to me, okay? I loved The Bodyguard last year. It was one of my favorite romances. It was very silly, but ultimately very charming. This book, the heroine was grating, the hero was decent, but the surrounding elements of the story really made it hard for me to enjoy. I wanted to root for Sadie and see her overcome her face blindness to be able to paint a really interesting and inventive portrait. That doesn't really happen. Her job stuff kind of falls by the wayside, even though that's like the majority of what this book's supposed to be about. The majority of the book is really spent with Sadie being gaslit by her family. This one could be hard to pick where to put, but honestly, boring is gonna beat out annoying any day of the week, so this is going to the back of the fucking line. Alright, y'all, I did not give you a 50% update on this book, but I finished Wildfire by Miss Hannah Grace, and I actually really enjoyed this. I have to say, I wasn't really expecting to enjoy this one as much as I did. I feel like for a lot of the book, I was kind of sitting at that like kind of middle of the road, like 2 or 3 star, but as the book continued, I felt like this book really showed me that it was like 3.5, 4 star material, and that Hannah Grace's writing is improving over time. Icebreaker, I believe, was her debut novel, and it kind of went viral. So many people loved that one, and I liked it, but I didn't really understand the hype after reading it. But this book, I feel like I do understand the hype for it. It's about our 2 main characters who I've promptly forgotten the names of, but there's a hero, there's a heroine. Oh, the hero's name is Russ. Russ. I do know that. He and the heroine hook up at a party, and she's like kind of forward, which I really fuck with heavily. He's a little bit more shy and a little more reserved, and so he's a little awkward after the exchange takes place, after they like hook up, but they both have a really good time, and I think the heroine wants it to happen again. I don't know about the hero, but regardless, they end up kind of running into each other again at this summer camp that they are working at over the summer. And I just really have to commend Hannah Grace and authors who do stuff like this for including so much outside of the romantic relationship in a romance novel. I think that often authors can kind of put everything to the wayside when they're writing a romance because they know that the romance plotline is the most important. And while that's true, I think so much shapes our perception of love and romance, and to not include that in like a new adult book would be a big mistake, and Hannah Grace doesn't make that mistake. We have a hero who has a dad who's got a gambling problem, who lets his son down multiple times, and that really colors how he interacts with people in the world and his confidence in himself. We also have a heroine who also kind of has daddy issues. She proclaims that she has daddy issues. I'm not putting that on her. And she works through that over the course of the story, is able to advocate for herself and also come to terms with the fact that sometimes your parents are just not the people that you want them to be, and sometimes they are just shitty people. And I really liked that lesson, I guess, for both of them and how they kind of deal with their family problems. You also have this like wide cast of side characters that I think makes the book feel more realistic, if at times a little bit like much. My only real complaint with this one, to be honest, is that it is too long. I think Hannah Grace books tend to be a little bit bloated. I think had we cut back on some of the side characters and just tightened up the plot just a little bit, this would have been a like slam dunk for me. I really liked this one, and again, I can see so much improvement from that first book. It felt a little bit more coherent, and I just thought this was a really good time. Didn't expect to enjoy this one, to be honest, and if I did, I expected it to be kind of more of a 3-star middle of the road read. But as it stands, I think I'm going to put this one right after Love Theoretically, and and before King of Pride. I feel like that makes total sense given what I thought about this book, but I had such a good time with this one, and I think if you are looking for a good college, like new adult romance, I think this one is definitely one to add to your list. All right, number 5, Meet Me at the Gherkin, is about our main character Fern, who sleeps with the dude that she just met many years ago in the past, right? But obviously this guy's coming back into her life, and he is going to help her figure things out, or she's gonna help him figure things out because he helped her many years ago, or some shit like that. Basically, he's going to have to team up with her to save her mom's delightful lakeside resort that she for some reason hates, because she's a whole lot of fun and not a brat at all. All right, if I'm being so fucking for real, I read this book like 6 months ago. I don't really remember much about it, other than that it is another book about a girl by a lake who was irritating. Weirdly, I disliked this one less than Hello Stranger though. This was like so forgettable, so amorphous, so boring, that I'm putting it between King of Pride and Hello Stranger. On the one hand, In the Likely Event by Rebecca Yarros has really convincing chemistry. I definitely feel this sort of like palpable relationship between Izzy and her military man boyfriend. That being said, I don't like these sorts of romances, and I feel like I've never articulated that, or if I have, I don't remember articulating that, but I'm personally not a fan of cop romances, military romances, just men in uniform. That's just not my thing, and I respect that it is other people's thing. It is just really not mine. I also think that the way that certain topics are handled in this book is not my favorite. Granted, I'm only 50% in, but I can't argue with the white savior arguments that are being made in the Goodreads reviews for this book. Essentially, the heroine gets into a plane crash with a man at the very beginning of this book. He is in the military. He saves her from this plane crash. I mean, he saves a bunch of people from this plane crash because he's a quick thinker and like super strong muscle man or whatever. And then in the present day, they are sort of like reconnecting, I suppose, and she is engaged to another man, and he is upset about this, and he is like protecting her in a war-torn country, I think it's Afghanistan, and is making sure that she is not killed, I guess, while she's there. I think she's a US senator or something like that. She is on a mission to save her sister, who is a journalist. I'm just not into this sort of thing, and I feel like I struggle with books like this for a number of reasons, but I think the biggest one is that I feel like I should have some level of objectivity when I'm doing videos like this, right? Like, I am reviewing the Goodreads books of the year, and like maybe this is the only Goodreads romance video you're gonna watch. Like, I don't want to say that this book is fucking terrible, but I am also human with emotions and feelings, and I just don't like this kind of thing. And that sucks, again, because I actually think that the romance is solid. I actually kind of like the romance, but I just can't anticipate like rating this highly. I just can't. It is what it is. It is what it is. I'm gonna finish the book. It's like one of those things where I'm like, do I even rate this? Can I just put this at the end of my list? Like, I don't think this is gonna win, and I don't like it. I think that's it. I think that's it for now. Hello, I'm back. Let's talk about my final thoughts on In the Likely Event. I don't have thoughts. I just know that this isn't for me, you know? And I think I expressed that pretty vehemently in the last clip, but I just don't really like the setting of this story. I don't really like the relationship dynamic. I don't really like the white saviorism. This is just not for me, you know? And I know a lot of people love this, and, you know, I've mentioned that I was reading this book, and a lot of people replied, wow, this is the best book I've read all year. And I'm like, okay, good for you. I'm happy for you. I'm glad that this book exists. I'm glad that books exist for people, you know what I mean? Even if they're certainly not for me. So here's the thing. I don't want to rate this book because there were elements of the book that I liked, but it's just never going to be for me. Ever, ever, ever. That leaves me in kind of a weird place. But like, here's the thing. If it's not for me, I don't need to rate it, and I can just put it at the end of the fucking line. Number 7, Things We Hide from the Light definitely doesn't sound like how I would refer to someone's butthole. It's definitely a book about a detective who has come to town to investigate a crime that happened in the first book in this series, and her love affair, I guess, with the chief of police, who is dealing with PTSD after some of the shit that's happened to him. He is no longer the charming guy that we got to know in the first book. He's going to be an asshole just like his brother from the first book. Here's the deal. I don't like romantic suspense. Being shot at or fearing for my life doesn't really add to the sex appeal of a romance, though I am apparently the only person on the planet who feels this way, because it seems like everybody and their mother loves this series. And you know what? More power to you. I just personally feel like the books are too long. I don't love the relationship development. I don't like how Lucy Score really likes to use the word milk in her sex scenes. All of that being said, this is a little bit better than the first book in the series, but again, kind of put me to sleep. So Snoozeville, but not totally irritating. So between Hello Stranger and Meet Me at the Lake. Hello from me and this one hair. I'm 50% into The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, not sure how she says it, but I can tell you a bitch knows how to write a book, or at least she knows how to write a book this year. I think this is the second year that one of her books has made it on the Goodreads Choice Award nominee list. I didn't love The Dead Romantics, which was her first book, I believe. This, however, I am enjoying, surprisingly. I didn't want to pick this one up. I wouldn't have picked this up on my own, but I purchased this a few months ago because I was like, you know what? I think this is going to make it onto the Goodreads Choice Awards, and guess what? She was right, folks. This book's about our main character, Clementine, which don't love. I think we could come up with a better name for a main character that doesn't feel so fucking quirky. But Clementine is dealing with the death of her aunt, Annalie, spelled anally. She's sad. She's not having a great time. And her aunt has left her this apartment that is supposedly magical. And in this apartment, it can time travel, or it can be a place of time travel for 7 years. So like 7 years in the past or 7 years in the future. And our heroine discovers that this random man is in her apartment and he is from 7 years in the past. And she does not communicate this information to him, but she instead like engages in a semi-romantic roommates sort of situation with him for a few days until he disappears mysteriously. And like the apartment no longer time travels, I guess. Outside of the apartment, she is dealing with a lot of stuff in her professional life. She is potentially going to get a really big promotion, but to kind of bag this promotion and to kind of like prove that she is as good as she has been as a publicist, she's supposed to land this really prestigious chef, and he is going to write a cookbook for them. Because I guess the publisher that she works for does like travel guides and cookbooks mostly. So anyway, she's supposed to get this guy, land him, and it's like a time travel romance kind of. I think the writing of this is really fantastic. I didn't expect to like this premise because I don't really like when the whole premise or crux of a romance is based on something that just logically cannot be overcome. And I know that that's silly because a lot of my most favorite romance tropes are ones where like things are forbidden. And I guess this isn't that far off, but you're telling me this man only knew her 7 years ago. And like, does he actually know who she is in present day? Is this like a fake scenario? I don't know. It's sort of confusing, the rules of the world, or like not even confusing, but we just haven't really figured out exactly what this means. Like, yes, she knew this guy 7 years ago, or like 7 years in the past, but does he know her? I don't know. I don't know how the rules of this are going to shake out, but the writing is just so charming. I love the kind of instant chemistry I felt between Clementine and Ewan, I believe is his name. He is this like auburn-haired chef who has a real passion for cooking and making food for others, and just like he just has a real zest for life, which I think is really charming. I have no idea how this romance is going to shake out. I am very curious to see if there are more flashback scenes or if that's like all we're getting. I'm assuming there's going to be more, but generally speaking, I'm having a good time with this. I think the exploration of grief is nice and not overdone. I mean, everybody's definition of overdone is going to be different. I'm fine with hard topics being handled in romance, but I don't really like when the romance is overshadowed by kind of like really, really hard-hitting topics like that. And I felt that way about The Dead Romantics. This is a little bit more bearable because it's not like that. And also, I believe the hero in this isn't fucking dead, which I think is the case in that one. I can't remember. I don't really care. This one, however, I'm liking. And actually, I think this will probably be one of my more favorite books that I'm reading for the vlog portion of this video. I could see this like being a 4 or 5 star read. I don't know. Stranger things have definitely happened. I guess like time traveling 7 years for some good dick. Okay, bye. Basic bitch alert. This was so good. I am sort of at a loss for words about this book. It was kind of perfect in every way. It was deeply romantic. The writing was snappy. It handles hard-hitting topics without overtaking the main plot line. The banter between hero and heroine is just spot on and perfect. And it's just deeply romantic. Like, this book is perfect. And I am shocked. I would not have wanted to pick this up. I didn't want to pick this up after reading The Dead Romantics. That book was not bad, but it was not great. It was not something that I personally connected with. However, this is really, really great. And the sort of like weird premise is something that I am willing to overlook. I didn't expect this to be one of the tops of this video, and yet here we are with a 5-star read. I'm not mad at it. I'm the opposite of mad at it, actually. This might make it onto my best romances of the year list. I think if you are looking for something that really checks all the boxes, sweet, sexy, charming, romantic, this is it. This is it for you. You're not gonna get in-depth fucking corn shucking good times, but there is sex in this book, so I mean, if you're upset at that, like, I don't know, get over it. This book was really good. And you might be asking yourself, Chandler, okay, like, where is this ranking? The tippy fucking top. Number 9, practice definitely makes perfect when your most recent date calls you a bore and you enlist the help of a really hot bodyguard to teach you how to date and how to catch the attention of men. This book is about Annie, who is a flower shop owner and a really nice girl, and Will, who is the bodyguard of a pop star that we meet in the first book in the series. This book is a quaint small town romance with a lot of swoony moments and tons of really great relationship development. It might not be the most exciting book on this list, but sometimes you just want something that's solid, dependable, and sweet. And this book delivers, so I personally give it 4 stars. Since there's 3 4-star reads at this point, it does make it kind of hard to decide where to put this one. Because it was normal length, I'm gonna put it between Love Theoretically and Wildfire. The problem with romantic comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld is that it is neither romantic nor a comedy in these first 50 pages. And because of time constraints and because I just don't fucking want to, I'm not going to finish this book. I gave it the old college try, as the kids say. I got, again, 50 pages in, and I am just failing to see what's funny about this or romantic. So the story follows our main character, Sally, who is a sketch writer for basically SNL, this book's version of SNL, and we follow her as she writes sketches for this show for a guy named Noah, okay? And like her main premise, I suppose, for one of her sketches that he basically out and out denies that he would do, this is the only sketch that he says, absolutely, I don't want to do this, is a sketch where he basically dates someone who is below him aesthetically. So basically like another sketch writer, I guess he's not a sketch writer, he is a musician who's coming onto the show as a guest host. Anyway, he is going to, I guess, date someone in this sketch, and it's going to be like illegal, right? Because there's no way that a really handsome and well-to-do man would date someone his age and someone who is less attractive than him, which is kind of the reverse of what normally happens, where a lot of successful, beautiful, smart, and intelligent women date these kind of like bland, unattractive men that write for the show. It's just a trend that Sally has noticed, and so she pitches this sketch to Noah, and Noah's like, isn't the joke not really on me then? Isn't that joke on other people? That doesn't really seem fair. And he basically dismisses it, but in the scene that I just read, she is helping him with his sketch that he came up with and like, you know, workshopping it to be something that could actually be on the show. And I think we're supposed to be charmed and be like, oh my god, Sally and Noah forever. The writing of this is so fucking dry and not funny. For a book that is set in an SNL type setting, it's not funny. And for those of you that don't like SNL, maybe that's no surprise to you, but I am just so not laughing at this. And I feel like this is so contrasted with 7 Year Slip, what I just finished. And that book was not necessarily pitched as a rom-com, but there are so many funny moments in that book. The writing just feels smooth, it flows, it's got this like charming romantic bend to it. And this book is not like that book. This book is not trying to be like that book, so I'm not necessarily comparing, you know, everything, but that book was effortlessly funny. This book is trying very hard to be funny and is not succeeding at it. And I also just don't know that I love the premise or the character. Like Sally, wow, she has no flavor. She is kind of bitchy and cynical and doesn't really have anything going for her, in my humble opinion. Noah seems pretty fucking boring too, so I feel pretty confident in DNFing this. I would say, and here's the thing, I haven't finished this book, I would bet that this is not a true romance. And if there is a romantic plot line in it, that's cool and all, but it was never going to be for me. So DNFing, gonna add it to just the back of the list, and with the like unranked stuff, yeah, no. Number 11, Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez just goes to show that when a hero truly hates himself, good things happen. This book is about our badass doctor, Brianna Ortiz, who is trying to gain a promotion at work. I believe she is just a regular doctor and she's trying to become like chief of surgery or something like that. But unfortunately, a man is hired to work at the hospital alongside her and is the guy that's chosen for the promotion instead. And she also has kind of a run-in with him at the beginning of the book where she immediately just kind of clocks him as an asshole, doesn't really understand who he is as a person, like doesn't care to get to know him. He, being the sweet guy that he actually is, writes Brianna a letter, I guess apologizes for what happened, also kind of explains himself. This charms her immediately, and she is like very curious about this guy and like what is there, like what more is there with him. So they start talking and they befriend each other. She kind of realizes that he has this like little bit of self-loathing going on, which of course is like so deeply sexy. And even the accidental pregnancy that happens in this book wasn't enough to fuck it up, which I think really says a lot about Abby Jimenez's writing. This is a 5-star read for me. Now the wheat and the chaff are starting to separate, the curds from the whey, the swimmers from the spum. Yours Truly is a book I truly loved, but I will say there was a moment of third act conflict that has this one sitting below the 7 Year Slip. A Long Time Coming by Megan Quinn. This book is actually surprising me. I feel like I have such mixed luck with this author. I've read quite a few of her books at this point. I've enjoyed some of her sports romances, I've enjoyed some of her other books, and others have been complete fails for me. I'm happy to report that at the 50% mark of this book, I'm actually having a pretty good time, despite the hero being named Breaker. This book's about Breaker and Leah. They've been friends since college, and we get to see them become friends in college, essentially. They're both into really geeky things. They like to have Scrabble nights. They both really like fan fiction and anything geeky, basically, you name it, they were into it. He likes bird watching, that sort of thing. And they have remained platonic for, I don't know how long, maybe a decade at this point. And things are getting a little complicated because our heroine is getting married soon to a guy that she met right after the death of her parents about a year ago. He's just popped the question and she said yes. And she has to kind of break it to her best friend that they're probably not going to be hanging out as much and that like their relationship's going to change. And I say that she is really not the proponent of their relationship changing, but our hero kind of knows that the relationship is going to change because she is getting married. married, and he's having a hard time kind of coping with this. He ends up getting set up on a blind date by Leah's fiance Brian, and he really likes this girl, but he's also like, I don't know, I'm just not feeling the spark. And as the story continues, obviously he realizes he has a spark with his best friend Leah. He sees her in a wedding dress because he is her man of honor, and he's like helping her, I guess, through this kind of challenging time. Both of Leah's parents are deceased, and so her mother-in-law is kind of like a pain in the ass and is really trying to make this wedding happen in like 5 weeks. So she's trying on wedding dresses with Breaker there, and Breaker sees her in a dress for the first time and is like, wow, she is beautiful. And I feel totally struck by lightning and attracted to her. And now he's really having to fight that sexual attraction he's feeling towards her, on top of the fact that he has, you know, always been best friends with her and sees every part of her. So I am enjoying it. I will say this book doesn't have like an incredibly exciting opening. I think the prologue's cute, but the story feels sort of ordinary in the way that it's plotted and paced. There's nothing like super remarkable about it. I'd say it's a little bit longer than it maybe needs to be, but with this 450-page length, I think Megan Quinn is able to establish this friendship, establish why these two should maybe be together. They've got shared interests. I think maybe like to see more relationship development, but I say that I'm not mad at how things are playing out. I just think there's a lot that was like in the past that is being brought up rather than like things being shown in the present to convince me these two should be together. But that being said, like I know they should be together. They have similar interests. He is very supportive of her. She's supportive of him. And it's just so clear that even though Brian is a nice guy, he's actually not villainized, even though he's probably not going to be like the choice. It's just so clear that these two should be together. So I don't know. I like it. I think it's pretty good. I could see this being a 4-star read. Maybe 3-star, maybe 4-star, but this is definitely better than a lot of the things that I've read for this video. And I'm surprised that it's on the list because I don't think I've heard anyone talk about it. But at the same time, Megan Quinn books are so popular, so I guess it makes sense. Anyway, I'll check in when I'm done, but so far I'm having a good time. All right, so A Long Time Coming was better than I had expected. I think I told y'all that I was having a really good time with it. I couldn't imagine this being less than a 4-star read. And I will say, I think the page length kind of took away from my like final love of this book. Also, the third act conflict was a little bit corny and too drawn out. Obviously, the heroine breaks up with her fiance. I like that she kind of does it of her own accord too, and it's not really influenced by the hero. Like she definitely decides on her own, like I don't want to be with this man, and she's kind of oblivious to the fact actually that the hero loves her and that like he wants a romantic relationship with her. So after they break up, you know, she is being wooed, I guess you could say, by her boyfriend. Also, I look fucking nuts. I promise I don't look this crazy in real life. Anyway, she ends up falling for her best friend, and he really puts on all the charm to woo her. He kind of messes up in the beginning by just like coming onto her sexually, which I mean she's into, but she's also confused. She's like, do you want to be with me actually, or is this just like a ploy? And he's like, no, I fucking love you. Let's do this shit. And it takes her a while, obviously, to come around to that, but they wind up together, as they should, you know? Romance is not dead. I don't know. This one's tough for me because when I'm like looking at my chart right here and like looking at the way that I'm ranking things, this one was cute, but I don't know that it's going to like beat out a Wildfire or a Practice Makes Perfect. To me, I think this is like a 3.5-star, low 4-star read. I think what I'm gonna do is put this one right after Wildfire, and I'm starting to see like a pattern emerge here. I guess this pattern's been emerging for a while, but it's like I've got my sort of like top tier reads and then everything else, like everything that's like 2-star or like I don't want to rate it. And this is definitely better than like King of Pride, but it's just not quite on par with like the other 4-star reads I've had. So I'm gonna put it after Wildfire. Christina Lauren do miss, actually kind of often, but they do strike gold on occasion. I'm pleased to report that The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren is 24 karat, baby. It's a book about romance novelist Fizzy, who is finally looking to find a love of her own. So when she's approached by a documentary filmmaker who's being forced to make a reality television dating show, she decides she's going to sign up. The only catch is, of course, that she falls for Connor, who is said documentary filmmaker. The sparks and the chemistry in this book is just so undeniable. I absolutely loved it. There's this initial misunderstanding too at the beginning of this book that I think sets it apart from some of the other books that we've read. There is this sort of like delicious tension and angst, and when that tension and angst is broken, it is explosive and fireworks light off, like I guess the cover of the book. I initially rated this book 5 stars, I will say. Absolutely loved it. I just feel like it's not a book I can see myself rereading, and I think that is the true hallmark of a 5-star to me, so I'm actually going to change my rating for this one to a 4-star. I just don't think I loved this book as much as Love Theoretically, so I'm going to put it right after it. All right, let's get this over with, shall we? I'm 50% into The Long Game by Elena Armas, and I am not loving it. I mean, I'm not shocked or surprised. I did not enjoy her first 2 books, and I'm not enjoying this one for a very different reason. I will say, I guess to her credit, this book doesn't feel like her other 2 books, and the issue I had with those ones was really the writing. I felt like the heroines in those books were a little bit irritating and just not really my cup of tea, but I know a lot of people love those kind of books, and I think in a lot of ways her writing kind of reminds me of Mariana Zapata. that being said, this book doesn't have that, which should be a win. It should be something that makes it to where I enjoyed this book more. However, I feel like there's nothing replacing it, right? The heroine in the story has absolutely no fucking flavor. She basically gets kicked, I don't want to say out of her job, but basically she fucks up and she attacks the professional soccer team's mascot for the team she works for. It goes viral, and now she's in charge of helping a little league soccer team in like North Carolina or something, I guess, get their team good. And it should be charming and it should be cute, but it's just not really any of those things. Surprisingly, I don't feel like there's enough moments spent with the team. I guess you could say, oh, there's like goats and stuff, that makes it fun. No, and also again, like if the kids are supposed to be at the center of the story, why aren't they at the center of the story really? And then you have like the whole romance between the coach of the team and Adeline, who I believe is supposed to be the team's manager. They're a pack of 10-year-old girls, by the way, this like little league team that she is managing. But the professional soccer star who is like coaching the team, I think is supposed to be charming and British and like sweet or whatever. Here's the fucking thing though. It's not that either of the characters are like egregiously bad or irritating. It's that they have literally no flavor. I don't understand what they see in each other. I mean, at this point, I guess it's nothing because they're not together in a relationship, but there is no like fun, playful banter. I don't understand either character's motivations, and this is a dual point of view story. Cameron, I have no idea why he is like helping out this team, except that he was asked to do it, I guess, and he's retired now, so sure. And then the heroine, again, it's like she's there, but what does she want? Like, I feel like it's so not often that I read a story where character motivations are this unclear, and I didn't realize, I guess, how important that is to a story. If I don't understand why the characters are doing the things that they're doing, I don't care why they are going to be in a relationship. I guess there's been some arguing between the two of them, but like, what's charming about that? I'm not impressed. I really want to DNF this book, I'm gonna be honest with you, but I think I'm gonna like try to skim the last 50% and give you my final thoughts. Alright, so I finished The Long Game by Elena Armas, and it was fine. I told you I was gonna skim. I didn't really skim the last part of this book, but I don't think it was able to overcome the issues that I had with it earlier on, which is pretty disappointing, but ultimately unsurprising given my history with this author. I think that if you like her books though, I think you might be disappointed by this one because it doesn't have that like quirky charm that people I think have come to expect from her books, given that her first two really had that quirky charm. But I do applaud her for trying something different with this heroine and like having a sort of, I wouldn't say reverse Grumpy Sunshine, but having a heroine who is a little less like quirky and upbeat. You know, I applaud her for the attempt, but I feel like it was missing the internal dialogue again that like makes her books so special and like get you in the mind of her characters. So I don't know, it was fine. The ending was cute, but ultimately like this is kind of like a low 3-star for me, like just kind of meh. And in terms of like where I would rate it amongst the other books that I've read so far, I think I'm gonna put it before King of Pride. Like that makes sense because I gave that one 2 stars, but it's gonna be after A Long Time Coming because that one to me was quite charming. So I feel like this is kind of a good place to put it, and I think like ultimately at the end of the day it'll probably kind of remain in the bottom tier for me, not in the top 10 spots, but probably just below because it was fine, but just like not my favorite. The right move is buying the love of your life a big ass, expensive ass house and making her favorite coffee every day, even though you don't drink coffee. This book is about Ryan and Indy. Ryan is an NBA player who is seen as kind of stoic and grumpy by the people in his life, especially the, I believe, GM of the team, and he is passed up for a team captain opportunity because of his like not a team player kind of approach, right? He's trying to remedy this, so he enlists the help of Indy, who is living with him. He kind of begrudgingly let Indy live with him. He wasn't super jazzed about it. Indy is his little sister's best friend. She just got out of a really bad breakup. She's dealing with a ton, including her infertility, which is a fairly large portion of this book, so I thought it was worth mentioning. They decide to fake date. It's gonna be a mutually beneficial thing. It is one of the most deeply romantic books I think I've read this entire year. I love the way that Ryan goes out of his way for Indy. All of the little romantic gestures really add up, and I think this might be my favorite indie romance that I read in all of 2023. This one is so hard for me because I think I really did love this one equally to The 7-Year Slip. The vibes are totally different, but again, I think it comes down to the tightness of plot, page length, and the recency of which I've read these books, so I'm gonna put it in second place. You Again by Kate Goldbeck is probably the book that I was the most interested in reading from all of the books that I haven't read yet for Goodreads Choice Words. Like for all of the books that I've had to vlog, this is the one that intrigued me the most because so many of y'all, when I did my reaction to the selections for the Goodreads Choice Words, the nominees, so many of y'all said that this was very good or very bad. I was like, okay, sign me the fuck up, very curious. The cover's cute in my humble opinion. I have to say, I'm actually very much enjoying this book. It's about our two main characters, Ari and Josh, and it is very much a a kind of like modern take on When Harry Met Sally, and that is my favorite rom-com, I'm gonna say. It's just so fucking good. Anyway, this is also really, really good. Ari is sort of a hot mess. She is a comedian. She kind of does odd jobs, and she is just living for the moment, living for the next good thing. But I would say at around the 20% mark, she gets married to a woman, and that woman is wanting to like have this open relationship. I think her name's like Cass or something like that. And eventually, unfortunately, Ari kind of gets kicked to the curb and is cheated on, essentially. Even though they have this open relationship, it was very clear that Ari's wife wasn't really interested in being faithful. So we have her kind of dealing with the emotional repercussions of being divorced. She really thought this was going to be a forever thing, even if her wife didn't. So she's dealing with this divorce. She seeks solace, I guess, in this guy who she keeps coming across over the years, kind of like Sally and Harry. They strike up this friendship. He's also kind of reeling from a breakup. He is a serial monogamous, very buttoned up, and he's also dealing with the loss of not only his dad, but also the fact that this business that he took over from his dad and kind of reinvented completely failed. Like, he's a chef and this restaurant was just a complete failure. So he is like not in a good place. She's not in a good place. They really lean on each other for emotional support during this time. I have to say, just the way that this book is told, I'm really liking it. I was reading The Long Game by Elena Armas earlier, and this couldn't be more different than that. This definitely has a witty banter, quickness. Both characters feel very real. They have personality. Ari at times feels maybe a little, I don't want to say manic pixie dream girl, maybe just so outside of the realm of anyone I've ever met before, like just so hot mess. But I think her emotions are relatable enough to where I'm like willing to overlook that. So I'm liking this. I am very curious to see when the relationship starts to evolve into something romantic. At this 50% mark, Ari has accompanied Josh to this like gala or something like that, where his dad, I believe, is being honored. I think there's like slow dancing or something. And so I'm like, okay, I think we're getting there. I think the romance is like ratcheting up. It's a very pleasant read. It's not the most deeply romantic or romance-centered book. And I feel like that was one of the things that I read in y'all's comments, was that you didn't feel like this should have been nominated for a Goodreads Choice Award in the category of romance because it felt too much like straight up fiction to you with like a romance subplot. And I don't know, I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. I think it sort of depends on how things evolve over the course of the rest of the story. I can definitely see arguments both ways. So far, I can't see this being anything less than like a 4-star read. Like, it is a very, very solid book. I have found myself laughing out loud a couple of times. Finished You Again, and I really liked this book. I have to say, I wasn't expecting to, given the premise and given what some of the Goodreads reviews for this book said. A lot of people were saying, oh, it's not really a romance. Didn't see where they're coming from. It definitely like spans a long period of time. Our characters go through some growth. They do kind of like break up. Ultimately, this was a deeply romantic story, and I think if you are a fan of Sally Rooney, Emily Henry, I think you would really like this book. It takes two incredibly messy characters with a lot of character flaws and just shows you why these two should be together. And you know what? That is what a romance is ultimately trying to do, right? Just tell us why two deeply flawed people should be together. You know, some books, characters are more or less flawed, but this one, characters can be irritating. Like, I could definitely understand what would put people off. A lot of people actually, in the reviews that I read, but that they didn't like the heroine, and I get it. She's not relatable to me in her hot messness. I honestly don't know anyone who is as deeply fucked up as she is, but I feel like she undergoes realistic growth throughout the story. It's not like she goes from being a hot mess to being perfect, but she definitely becomes compatible with the hero, you know, despite just like liking him, thinking he's sexy, and like enjoying his company. I liked this. I love the big love declaration at the end. It's very much When Harry Met Sally. I know some of the reviews, again, were saying like, it tried to be, but it wasn't. And I'm like, you know what? But it was. It was like a modern take on it. It's exactly what it was. And it pulled it off. So 4 stars. I liked it, okay? And I think I'm going to put this one between The True Love Experiment and Practice Makes Perfect. I kind of didn't know where to put this one because I feel like we're swimming in a sea of 4-star romances, which is a good place to be. It seems like we're just having banger after banger, and I, for one, am simply hoping it never stops. Powerless by Elsie Silver is about childhood best friends Jasper and Sloane. He saves her from getting married to a total piece of shit, and they kind of fall in love, of course. I know it sounds a little basic, and premise-wise, it sort of is. But Elsie Silver is really, really excellent at executing on tropes that we all know and love. I thought this was fun, and I really understood both characters' hesitancy to get into a relationship together. The only reason this wasn't a 5-star read for me is because Elsie put out 3 books this year. The other 2 I liked a little bit more. And I personally wanted a little bit more on-page development of the relationship. I feel like this often happens when it is a childhood friends to lovers thing. You just kind of assume that the reader will understand this connection that they've had the entire time, and I think sometimes authors don't put in enough work to show us on page why these two should be together. So not a major deal. Obviously, it's Elsie Silver. It was still fantastic, but this wasn't my favorite book by her this year. And when I really try to think about what I loved, I have to say I'm kind of drawing blanks. Like, this one, compared to some of the other ones, just didn't stand out to me. So I'm gonna put this one For a Long Time Coming after Wildfire. Who's ready to get pucked up? I'm 50% into Pucking Around by Emily Rath, and this is the second time that I am attempting to read this book. I tried before, try as I might, physically to read this book. I was just not entranced, as the kids shall say. Here's the thing, why choose novels? I just don't have luck with them. I deeply want to. I deeply want to be that girl that's just like, I was gonna say goblin glizzies, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I want to be that person, and I just simply am not. I just think a little too hard about the logistics of it, you know? Polyamorous relationships, I get it. Everybody's kind of sharing, or people are like pursuing different things, but like how magical is this girl Snatch that she would attract 3 beautiful men? Is it misogynistic to say I just don't think that's gonna work? I don't know. Okay, let me talk about this book, okay? But our main character, Rachel, she is a physician who landed her dream like internship, I guess, at this I was gonna say rink. New hockey team in Jacksonville, because Jacksonville is just a place everybody wants to live. She's reunited with a guy that she hooked up with at her brother's wedding. Like, I don't think that guy was at her brother's wedding, but was like in the lobby of the hotel where the wedding took place. And she hooks up with him and they have a magical night of passion. And sure, I could have listened to that novella audiobook. Was I going to? No, because the audiobook for this book, it's like 24 hours long and that's obscene. Anyway, Rachel reunites with this man. His name is Jake and he has a monster cock. She also gets to meet the equipment management man, Caleb, who apparently is like golden and has a really sweet dog, but also gives like vampire demon vibes, as is evidenced by the sex that I just finished reading. And then we've got Mars, I believe his name is. He's the Finnish goalkeeper, is I guess trying to hide the fact that he's injured, and she's trying to help him because she's a doctor, right? Despite the HIPAA violations, this book is fine, okay? If you are willing to overlook all of the, I don't want to say bullshit, but if you're willing to overlook all of the unrealistic aspects of this book, it's fun, okay? It's a fun time. It's hot. I like seeing people have sex. Well, okay, I like reading about people having sex. I don't want to see people have sex. The sex scenes in this book are hot. So far, Mars has not joined in the fun, but I'm sure he will eventually. Mostly at this point, we're kind of just dealing with Caleb and Homegirl and Jake having fun. Good for what it is. I like that the sex is pretty gay as well, which is nice. I understand sexuality is complex, but I like that everybody is having a good time together and that the swords are crossing. I can't talk about this book seriously. I really can't. It's better the second time around, okay? I'm sort of invested. I want to see where things go. There's a scene where they like spit into each other's mouths, so, you know. It's a book. Well, all's well that happy ends well. I finished Fucking Around, and I will say this book actually pleasantly surprised me. I really thought this was going to end up being like a 2.5, 3-star read because it is egregiously long. There's no reason for this book to be this long. However, I feel like this book sort of took my complaints and fears with why choose novels and sort of got me to rethink those things. And I think that's because this book is truly a polyamorous romance. It's not just 4 or 5 different men agreeing to fuck the same woman. And I liked that. I liked that there was a lot of communication about who was going to have contact with who, what they wanted their relationship to look like. Essentially, I think like the way that everything evolved is that the Finnish guy has his like own one-on-one relationship with the heroine, and then the other 2 guys have sort of like a relationship with each other and then also with the heroine. So it's cute. I actually really liked how this book ended. They go public with their relationship. Our heroine does get in trouble with her job for like violating HIPAA basically, which is, you know, good for that to actually have been addressed. I did appreciate that. Basically, she ends up keeping her job and everything is hunky-dory. They all just fuck like rabbits. Cum is everywhere. And that's fun, you know? They're gonna be a happy family, and it seems like most of the people in their life are accepting of their relationship, which is nice. Really don't have much to complain about, again, except for the length of this book. I know that a lot of these other books I have bitched about the length, but there is absolutely no reason for a romance, especially a smutty romance, to be for 700 pages long and to be a 24-hour audiobook. What in God's name? I'm sorry, that's just obscene. So this one's tough for me. I had a good time with it. I don't think that ultimately this is like the most me romance ever. I think if you're someone who likes a traditional romance and you want something that feels like very digestible, I don't know that this is going to be for you. If you want something that feels intensely smutty and you do like some good communication in your stories, maybe this will be for you. For me, I think I'm gonna give this a 3-star. It was fine. And in terms of like where I would rank this, I think I'd put this between A Long Time Coming and Final Offer. Yeah, I don't know. This was a decent why choose. Maybe not for me. I like to choose. Okay, bye. Now, I'm not sure how you can make a book about a bona fide Disney adult and billionaire CEO unfun, but somehow Lauren Asher managed in Final Offer. This is a book that I was really, really excited about because the hero Cal is unlike the other 2 heroes in the series. They're both these kind of, again, like grumpy stoic types, what you think of when you think of a billionaire romance. Cal is kind of a hot fucking mess, and I liked the promise of his character. I wanted to see some self-loathing in there because that's kind of the girl I am. I like a good self-loathing hero, but unfortunately, Cal's substance abuse in this book is something that is not resolved quickly and takes up the bulk of the story. And I'm not saying that romances shouldn't have hard-hitting topics in them. I think that that is definitely something that is important. I think people should feel seen in a romance, but there were just a couple of things that made this book not perfect for me, namely the heroine. I felt so bad for her. Not only does her childhood best friend have a substance abuse issue, and that's kind of why they aren't together, but also she is in charge of taking care of her niece. She has custody of her niece because her sister has a substance abuse problem. It's just really sad that the heroine has so many people in her life that are letting her down, and it really dragged down the tone of this book. Additionally, Cal fucks up a lot. It's not just like one time and then he gets help. He continues to fuck up and fuck up and fuck up, and it's a long book, so you just have to see the trials and tribulations over and over again. Again, it's like, it's not that I don't think serious romances should exist, it just feels incongruous with the rest of the series, and I feel like it needed a little bit of levity to like a complete story to me. So yeah, this book was just fine. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't fun, and if there's something that I personally require from almost all of my romances, it's a little bit of fun, especially again when all of the other books in the series were, so I'm gonna put this one after Pucking Around, but before The Long Game. Number 20, the last book, Incompatible Place by Emily Henry. This book's about Harriet and Wynne, who have been together for very many years, but unfortunately, they are now broken up, but they have to pretend to be together because they are going on this like friendcation, if you will, with all of the friends they've collected over the years or through high school or college. I don't fucking remember, to be honest. I don't really care. The friends are boring. This book fucking sucked for me. There is so much emphasis on friendship and friendships growing apart, and I, in theory, like that, but I don't give a single hairy fuck about any of the friends in this book. They were either grating or forgettable, and a lot of the characters just kind of ran together. Like the conflict surrounding the friendship and like whether or not they were being honest with each other was just kind of not my favorite. But obviously like the worst part of this book was the relationship between Harriet and Wynne. Why would you date someone that you wouldn't feel comfortable sharing details about your family with? The empathy that I normally lack was even more lacking in that particular aspect of the book. I just genuinely don't fucking understand how people who are, I believe, nearing their 30s can't just fucking say, hey, shit's going wrong in my life, can you be there for me? And one thing that I wholeheartedly stand by is that women should be able to and should be encouraged to be absolute fucking degenerates, okay? I really do believe that women should be pieces of shit if they want to be. And I'm not saying that's what Harriet decided to do, but dropping out of medical school to follow a man to Wyoming to do pottery because you suddenly decided that the only reason you were doing medical school and the only reason that you were like halfway through was because you were trying to impress your parents, be so fucking for real. Also, Wynne was a total fucking sad sack. Like, mega sympathy for the shit that he had to go through. Like, his family life seemed pretty rough, you know? His dad died, I think his mom had Parkinson's. Like, to hard things, okay? But can we give the man some personality trait, for fuck's sake? 2 stars. And because it's the season of giving, I'm gonna be generous, and I'm gonna give this book a place between King of Pride and Meet Me at the Lake. Bah fucking humbug. Alright folks, now let's move on to the fun part of the video, in which we're going to guess which book is gonna be the winner of the Goodreads Choice Awards. You know, it might be the book that I just finished talking about, who knows? Let's look at my final rankings, shall we? I feel like this is not at all what I expected, frankly. The 7-Year Slip is a book that I was, again, so hesitant to read. Probably the book that surprised me the most. Definitely fucking surprises me that I think this should be the winner of the Goodreads Choice Awards, but frankly, all of the books in the top 10 I really enjoyed, and I don't know if I've had this many highly ranked and highly rated books ever before. Like, I don't think I've ever had this many 4-star reads, and it's interesting to me to see the dichotomy. It's like lots of 5 and 4 stars and a lot of 2 stars. Not a whole lot of like middle of the road 3-star books, but that's okay. I actually had more fun, I think, this year reading the books, and I feel really confident with my final rankings. But I think what's more interesting here is comparing what my top 10 is to what my actual predictions are, because just because I enjoyed these books doesn't mean that I actually think these are going to make it into the top 10. I do, in fact, have 2 brain cells that I rub together on occasion, and those brain cells are telling me that the predictions that I made are going to differ, again, from my actual top 10. And I'm illustrating that here with the red boxes, right? The books that I've highlighted and read in my top 10 are books that I don't actually foresee being in the top 10, right? The True Love Experiment, You Again, Just Makes Perfect, Powerless, and A Long Time Coming. While I liked all 5 of these books, I don't actually anticipate that these are going to be in the top 10, as much as I would like them to be. The 5 books that I actually think are going to make it into the top 10 are going to be Happy Place as the winner of fucking course, Things We Hide from the Light, because again, nobody can get enough of Miss Lucy's score, Meet Me at the Lake, because people gag over Carly Fortune, Romantic Comedy, because this is pushed at us so hard by publishers that there's just no way this isn't going to be here, and In the Likely Event is kind of a wild card that I threw in here, but I feel kind of confident in this decision because everybody loves Northwing, right? So like, why wouldn't In the Likely Event make it onto this list, even though I thought it was pretty fucking horrible? So let's go ahead and look, folks. Let's see who the winner of the 2023 Goodreads Choice Awards are. Okay, I'm scared. I'm nervous. I've got my laptop on my lap, if that wasn't clear. Yeah, god damn it. Happy Place by Emily Henry. Jewelry. Who is shocked? Who is surprised? Am I great at predicting? I think I am. Does not take much intelligence, actually, to figure out who would be the winner of the Goodreads Choice Awards, but I think it's a damn shame because I think there are so many better romances. But let's go ahead and evaluate my top 10 versus the real top 10. We've got some stuff here, right? And I think I was pretty spot on with my actual like predictions. Let's look at that first. Let's look at that. Okay. All right, my top 10, my predictions, and the real top 10, okay? So I think it's pretty clear from looking at this that I'm pretty goddamn good at predicting things. I wasn't like excellent at necessarily predicting the order in which my predictions would go versus like the real top 10, but I think that's just because this year the things that I thought would actually make the top 10 were not things I was enamored with. It was like a bunch of bullshit that I was fine with it being in any order. And there's not much I feel like that was missing from my predictions versus the real top 10. If we look at my predictions again versus the real top 10, Meet Me at the Lake didn't end up making the top 10, which actually does kind of surprise me, and In the Likely Event didn't. That was my wild card, so I'm not like super shocked, but I guess I'm kind of surprised at the two that did make it in, which are Final Offer and King of Pride. I do like to see indie romance authors making it on the list, and I guess you could argue that Lauren Asher and Anna Huang are like traditionally published now, but they started off indie, and like in my heart they're indie, okay? You know, not to shoot my own fucking horn, but I'm damn good at predicting these things, okay? So how do I feel now that we're done? How do I feel now that I correctly predicted the Goodreads Choice Awards winner? I'm feeling interesting about it. Like looking at the real top 10, I did love Theoretically. I did love Yours Truly. Right Move, I'm glad to see there. The 7-Year Slip, I'm glad to see there as well. If there's any takeaway, I would say from this, it's read my top 10, okay? I'm a connoisseur of romance, shall we say, and I just believe that the ones in my top 10 are some books that have kind of like flown under the radar this year, things that I really do think deserve your attention. Again, The 7-Year Slip, I think I've heard a lot of people talk about this, but it's not one that I would have organically picked up on my own, and I know a lot of my like indie romance girlies, y'all probably wouldn't have picked this one up either, so go ahead and pick it up. I think you're really going to enjoy it. The Right Move, again, is one that I really desperately think you need to pick up. You Again by Kate Goldblack. I feel like it's sort of divisive, but again, if you like Emily Henry and you like Sally Rooney, I feel like you gotta pick it up. I feel like you would really enjoy it. Powerless, of course, by Elsie Silver, but can I be honest with you? I really wish Hopeless would have made it on this list by her. I think you should pick that one up. And A Long Time Coming was fun if you're looking for a really solid friends to lovers romance. I do think if you pick up any of these books though, you're not going to be disappointed. That's actually not true. You're probably gonna be disappointed if you pick up books that weren't in my top 10, but there are so many, I think, amazing books on this list. And I think this is probably, I want to say my favorite year that I have participated in, but I do think it is worth noting that there is a lot lacking from this list when it comes to diversity, right? There are no queer romances on this list for the most part. I guess you could count Fucking Around, and there are not very many authors of color represented here, which is very disappointing. I do plan on actually reading the Amazon version of this. Amazon has its own top 20 romances, and that actually seems to be surprisingly more diverse and representative of romance as a whole. So I will actually be doing a video on those books in the new year, so be looking out for that. But as always, I loved doing this video. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all so much. Let me know in the comments down below what you would have voted on for your winner. I must know, but I will see you tomorrow.